lies in wait amidst your dreams, where nothing is ever how it seems. It is a portal to a terrifying world beyond the doorway to nightmare.
DVR Plus by Winslow Swan. Audiobook narrated and produced by Edward James Beesley. Are you ever going to come to bed? Joseph looked up at his wife, Carrie, and recognized the stern look on her face. He adjusted himself in the recliner, the remote control for the television sitting in his lap, a lukewarm beer sitting on the small table beside him. Carrie, a beautiful 30-year-old career woman, was tapping her left foot in consternation. Her silk robe was tied tightly around her slim body, a stray blonde hair hung down over her right eye. "Yeah, in a little while," Joseph told her. "Right after this program." "I swear," she replied. "I don't know what you would do without that stupid idiot box. My God, there hasn't been anything good on that thing for 10 years. "No, that's not true," he tried to argue. "What about that one about the pawn shop?" "Really? You're going to throw around some reality show?" she asked, her face drawn and tight. "Hey, they have a lot of good information on that show," Joseph said, his voice betraying the fact that even he did not believe what he had just said. Carrie stopped tapping her foot and said, "You have to be at work in the morning. Or are you watching some stupid talk show?" "I can record it," he said without thinking. In exasperation, she turned and headed toward the bedroom. Joseph sighed, drank from the beer can, and began watching an infomercial. "So, this is better than what I have already?" Joseph asked the customer service representative that had called from the satellite company.
"Yes, sir,"
was the reply from the woman on the phone.
"This is our Plus Series 3000. We think that you will be very satisfied with all the new features that have been built in."
"And how much is this going to cost me?" Joseph asked, knowing that there was always a catch.
"Absolutely nothing.
The woman told him.
We are running a test market before making the new Plus Series 3000 available to the general public. We only ask that you complete a short survey online each night for 1 week. After that, the unit is yours to keep."
Joseph had always been suspicious of something that sounded too good to be true, but in this case, when could you have it installed? The DVR Plus Series 3000 had arrived by UPS the very next day. Joseph had a somewhat working knowledge of hooking things up to the television, and the instructions were very straightforward. After he made sure that the cables were correctly in place, he sat in his recliner and removed the shiny new remote control from the separate box. After pressing several of the buttons without results, he realized that the batteries were not included. Sitting back down, he managed to get the DVR Plus Series 3000 to work. "Just like the old one," he told himself after a few minutes. There really wasn't much of a difference between the old receiver and the new deluxe model. He searched through all of the menus that were offered, saw he could record one show while watching another, how he could schedule events to record even through his cell phone, and could find no difference. "Well, at least it's new," he said as he changed to the channel to watch some ancient situation comedy. He looked down at the remote control and saw the button in the bottom left-hand side. There were no markings, no indication as to what the button did. He looked through the instructions and could find no mention of a small button on the bottom part of the remote control. Let's just see," he said to no one, pressing the lone button. The screen on the television went black for only a moment. A picture appeared of an office, spacious and clean. Out of the window was the city, cloaked in darkness. A man stood behind the desk, shuffling papers as if he were getting ready to leave. To Joseph, the man looked very much like one of the partners at the law firm in which he was a junior. Another man who Joseph could have sworn was Mr. Kirchfield, a junior partner in the firm, walked into the office.
"Lansing,"
Kirchfield said, addressing the man behind the desk. What do you want, Ron? I don't have time. You are going to make time, the Kirchfield lookalike told the Lansing lookalike, pulling a rather large gun from his custom-made suit pocket. What the hell are you going to do with that? Lansing asked. Nothing if you accept my proposal, Kirchfield told him. Otherwise, I shall have to make it look as if it were an accident. Joseph did not move an inch, his eyes fixed on the scene unfolding before him on his television. This must be some sort of mystery program that was on some network that he had yet to discover. Whatever it was very entertaining. Sorry, Kirchfield, Lansing said, but you already know what the board has recommended, and that is what we are going to do. Throw me to the curb? I don't think so. Kirchfield had managed to get behind Lansing in less than a second, grabbing him by the collar. Lansing pleaded, but to no avail, as Kirchfield threw the man straight out of the 32nd floor window, shattering the glass and hearing the man scream as his body fell into oblivion. With a satisfied smile, Kirchfield looked dead into the camera and winked. He quietly left the office. Have you heard, Joseph? Miss Reynolds, the secretary for the whole firm, was a fountain of information on everything from who was pregnant to who was dating whom. She had tears in her eyes this morning when Joseph walked into the office. Her what? Joseph asked. It's Mr. Lansing. He committed suicide last night. Jumped right out of the window from his office. I knew that things were getting a bit rough around here, but what with Mr. Kirchfield trying to take over Mr. Lansing's department, but suicide? Oh, it's always the ones that never say anything that do it. Don't you think so? Joseph had only heard the word suicide. He just could not connect the death of one of his co-workers in the program that he watched the night before. You don't look so good, Miss Reynolds told him. I think I need to go home. He stared at the blank television screen. He was a little apprehensive about turning it on after what he had seen last night and what had transpired at the office. Just a show, he tried to convince himself. With hesitation, he pressed the remote's on button. The television came to life, the channel set on another infomercial network. Joseph looked down at the remote control, his hand trembling slightly. With his finger that seemed to be shaking the most, he pressed the button that held no insignia of any kind. Looking up, he saw the screen go blank. The scene that suddenly came up seemed to be familiar. It was a regular street with houses lined up along well-manicured lawns. Late-model cars were parked in the driveways. Here and there were garbage cans along the curb, ready to be picked up the next day. The street lamps were all ablaze, casting shadows among the windows of the homes. The camera slowly panned towards a house and... Wait, isn't that my house? And went in for a close-up of the front room window where a man stood looking out. No, not my house, Joseph said, for he saw the Lincoln parked in the driveway. The man in the window looked directly into the camera and, just as Mr. Kirchfield had done, winked. The scene cut to inside the house. Why does that look so damn familiar? Joseph asked himself. The man held up a large gas can and began to spread the liquid around the room. Joseph looked intently at the scene unfolding before his horrified eyes. Lying on the sofa was the body of a woman scantily clad in a nightgown. Her short brown hair was matted with blood, and her eyes were wide and lifeless. Joseph swore that it was Mrs. Rachel Hastings, his next-door neighbour. The man looked exactly like Frank, her husband, who was now spreading a flammable liquid around the house, dousing all of the furniture and covering the lifeless body of his wife. It can't be, Joseph exclaimed, remembering that just last weekend he and Carrie had had a wonderful time at the Hastings cookout by their pool, celebrating their 10th anniversary. With another wink, Frank Hastings lit a match and threw it onto the living room floor before retreating toward the back of the house. The flames licked and ignited everything. Joseph watched in horror as the body of Rachel was consumed. The screen on the television went blank and was instantly replaced by the infomercial. Joseph went to the bathroom and threw up. Frank's just out of town, Rachel told Joseph the next morning. Joseph had fully expected the house to be a smouldering ruin, but everything had been exactly as it should have been, with everything in its proper place. Did you need something? Rachel asked him. Joseph had made something up and went to his own car, making his way to the office. He poured himself into his work, trying not to think about the nightmarish scene on the television. After lunch, he decided to browse around the local mall that was on his way back home. There were really no pressing cases to work on, so he had decided to make it a short day. Passing a store that sold televisions, he noticed one that had been tuned to the local news. His stomach lurched when he read the caption of the house fire that had claimed one victim. He instantly recognized the house, the name of the street, and could see his own home a few yards from the flames. Firefighters worked to save the smouldering homes. Joseph walked out of the mall in a daze. The remote sat in his hand. A bottle of scotch, a bucket of ice, and a half-filled glass sat beside him on the table. The television sat like a silent sentinel, waiting for Joseph to command it to show him something. "It's just not possible," he said as he pressed the power button, bringing the television to life. The blank screen that had preceded the other two murders was quickly replaced. Joseph tried to comprehend what he was seeing. No, it can't be. The scene was a man, the camera only showing the back of his head, sitting in the recliner, watching television. On the table beside him was a bottle of scotch, a bucket of ice, and a half-filled glass. Walking into the scene was a woman. No, not just any woman. This was the woman that he had loved and married and had spent the last 8 years with. Carrie. She turned towards the camera and winked, just as the other two had done. In her hand was a large butcher's knife. She slowly raised the weapon and crept towards the figure in the... Joseph slammed his fist down onto the remote. The screen went blank. He tried to catch his breath, tried to make some sense as to what he had just seen. The door to the kitchen startled him. "Joe, I'm home," the soft voice of his wife echoed down the hallway. "I thought that I might do something special tonight," she called out to him. "Carrie?" his voice croaked out. "I thought that I might try a roast. What do you say?" she asked him. "Carrie?" he said, a little louder, too afraid to move. "Any idea where we put the butcher knife?"
Epilogue. The butler did it.